Live from Fairlawn Church in Fort Pierce, Florida, you are joining Mark Aycock and Jimmy Lloyd in the lobby.
Hey guys, welcome to In the Lobby, and I'm Jimmy Lloyd, and obviously sitting to the left of me is not Mark Aycock, as the beginning of this In the Lobby podcast said at the beginning. I believe it still does that, where, this is Jimmy Lloyd and Mark Aycock, but no, it is once again, for the second week in a row, my beautiful wife, Julie. Hey baby, how you doing?
Hey baby, how you doing?
How you doing? I'm doing okay. Glad to have you here for the podcast. We're doing a lot of videos together lately.
We are.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yes, it is. It is a lot of fun. It's something that I enjoy doing, and something with us comes natural. And I think so. We talk, normal. So it's just us pretty much talking.
It's pretty much our life. Whenever what you're witnessing is just how we are with each other.
Yes.
All the time.
Yeah, I always thought it would be interesting if. Could be interesting both ways, good and bad. Like if we put cameras in our house and we did like a like a reality show, like a pastor reality show, a pastor's family or something.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So it's.
We already have cameras in our house.
Yes.
You see on the cameras, you see Jimmy chasing our kitty cats all over the place.
Yeah, they're just playing with them. That's why you got animals. They have fun with them. They like it. They enjoy me chasing them. They do. They find new hiding spots, and then I have to find them. It's a game we play. Yeah, I think they're fully understand. That's part of it. If you're going to become a pet in the Lloyd household, you have to be willing to be chased at some point, at some time.
I'm going to have to share some of those videos. I'll have to find them and share them.
That would be interesting. So, but pretty much, it is kind of like recording our life, and we're pretty transparent, I think. And yeah. I know we share a lot of, or I do anyways, when I come up on Sundays and speak. I kind of freely, without rehearsal, share stuff that goes on in our lives and just things that happen in general. And I think it's important for people to know, hey, these pastors and pastors' wives and pastors' family, they're not perfect. They don't everything's not just cookie cutter and everything's not just easy. And it's like, oh man, if I could just be, as in touch with God as, the Lloyds or the Aycocks or, no, we're real people, we're real families, and there's arguments and there's disagreements, and, there's a lot of different things that go on. Just normal family stuff, really, is pretty much it. So, it's that's just part of it. And I think it's important that that's shared. So, here we are doing it in the lobby, and this wasn't planned. We're doing a lot of remodeling and here at the church, and Pastor Mark, he's actually wearing two hats, and he is our remodeling carpenter guy, expert, whatever, and he is building some barn doors right now.
Looks awesome. And
he, yes, it is for our social hall that is hopefully going to be ready pretty soon. But we're getting ready to record, and he's like, hey, yes, how about you enjoy doing it? So we're like, all right, we can always find something to talk about. So here we are doing it in the lobby.
Here we are.
And what we decided, because we talked real quickly about what we would do, is with you reading through the Bible, we talked about that last week.
We did.
About you starting to, we've been in ministry together for like
5 years.
5 years, going on 5, maybe.
Since 2006, April 2016.
So we've been doing that. And
oh my gosh, it has been 5 years.
Yeah. So this is not, you kind of got thrown into it with ministry and stuff. So I thought it's something interesting that you shared last week is within this past month, or maybe a little over a month now, is the first time that you have actually just sat down and started reading through the Bible. And we talked about it, there's kind of a challenge you accepted a month ago. We're not going to talk all about that. If you guys want to see that and find out, hey, what challenge it was, you didn't watch last week's podcast, you can go on the YouTube channel and Facebook and check that out. It's a very interesting thing. But it's, for some people, it may sound, kind of strange coming from a pastor's wife and say, this is the first time, I picked up the Bible. Obviously, there's times in service, it's like, okay, turn to this or whatever. We throw scriptures up on the screen. Yeah, you're reading it then. But with that, I thought, man, how transparent you are, because there are probably, not like I went around and took a poll, but there's probably a lot of pastors' wives that there's probably a lot of pastors that never pick up the Bible other than preparing a message or something, or, just people that come to church, just normal, everyday people coming to church that just pick up the Bible and just, start reading it. And I remember one time before talking to some people and asking, why they don't read the Bible, and they're like, this is boring. And I think that is the kind of the common idea that we have, the mindset is, well, it's kind of boring, I mean, I hear you preach about it on Sundays, and that's your messages are pretty boring. So, the Bible is, but reading through it, it's actually anything but boring. It's not. I mean, there are some very interesting things, and we have been reading. Both of us have been really kind of big advocates, I guess, of the Passion Translation, the TPT version. Whether you are on the TPT bandwagon or not, it's the Word of God, and how I always say to me, it's written out. It reads like I speak, like I talk, just with a little less y'alls. And there's still some words in here I got to look up. I'm like, I have no idea what that means, so let me look it up. But through this, since we've been reading it, there's questions that come up.
Yes.
And you asked me, and so before you started reading the Bible and going through from Matthew all the way through, I decided through the Passion Translation to read through the Bible again from New Testament Matthew and just read it all the way through with the Passion Translation. I feel like there's been a lot of revelation through that, but one thing that's helped is I'm ahead of you in that, and so when you ask questions, a lot of times I can go back in mine where I wrote notes, and I can answer it, and there's sometimes where I can't answer it. So since we didn't really have anything planned, what we decided to do, is this to be kind of like a Q&A. And we always thought about kind of doing a Q&A podcast, but, I mean, there's been some questions answered, but not a whole lot. We haven't done a whole lot of podcasts, Pastor Mark and I. So this is kind of like a Q&A, and I feel like you are kind of representing the church body whole, and we're going to have you go through some questions. I think we asked Brandon to also, he may have a couple questions. Also right here in the studio is Mark Peterson. He's hanging out in the studio. They can't hear you, Mark, because you don't have a microphone. And but he said, hey, but he may have a question. We told him to, if he has any, and he can give it to Brandon and he can ask it. So just going through, letting this be a Q&A, we're going to kind of do that. And if you guys have any questions, you can put it down in the comment section. It's not something we'll be able to get to at the same time as the podcast, but it is questions that maybe just questions that Julie has, maybe stuff that you'll just come to your head, and we'll answer them next week. We always try to answer all the questions the following podcast if we can, or maybe we'll even be able to answer it in the comment section. So with this, do you have any questions yet, or do we want to go with Brandon first? Or
It doesn't matter. We can do Brandon first if you want to.
Well, do you have a question ready right now?
I got lots of questions. I don't have them necessarily ready, written down, because we just is not very organized today.
Okay.
But I just have questions in general.
Before we answer any questions, I feel like I need to say this. One, I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anybody that knows Jimmy Lloyd. I do not have all the answers. And there's going to be, through this, this may be a very short podcast because I may just answer every question. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm going to try to answer them, and I will say this. Through answering these questions, I'm going to give you kind of how I interpret it and something kind of funny with the Word of God, when I read through it, I don't want to say funny, it's not really, but with that, it's the living Word, so when I read it, I get different things. But I've been doing this church thing since I was a baby. 3 days old, my parents first brought me to church. So with that, my opinions and my thought process has changed as I feel like as I've grown closer to God. And if you ask me these questions 10 years from now, hopefully, I'll be even closer to God, and there'll be other. But I hope that it never stays the same. I hope that God continually reveals new things to me, and that I will continue to open up my heart, open up my mind to receive new things. And there have been times through this journey, through this walk, I have looked back and said, I was totally wrong. And that's happened. And one of them is with me. If you talk about what a lot of people like to call eternal security, or once saved, always saved. I think there's you can walk away from God. You can kind of denounce. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Your beliefs or your
Christianity.
It says that if you confess with your mouth, believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, but I think if you kind of did that in reverse and you said, no, you know what, I was wrong, he's not Lord, he's not Savior, this thing, I think with that, yes, but with where, hey, every time, if I mess up and I do something that's considered a sin, do I believe that, hey, if I walked out into Rhode Island Avenue and I got hit by a car and I died, I'm going to go to hell? I don't believe that. I do. I believe that Jesus died for our past, present, and future sins. I think that if every time we sin, then we got to go back and do the whole thing over again. That is us taking Jesus and putting him back on the cross every time we sin. And then it's not really, kind of more about like what I'm doing, And same thing like with confessing sins. We do that for relationship, not with each other, confessing sins to each other. But if it was confessions that got us to heaven, well, then we should be worshiping confessions when we come to church. It's not confessions that did that. I know there's some beliefs that you got to confess every sin you've ever done in your life, and it's like, well, how about if I don't remember them? And there are actually some teachings that if you don't remember them, you better pray that before you die that God will reveal them to you. And then there's people, and this is a real thing, there's people that are like, they are sitting there trying to think of all these past sins they did so they can confess them and be forgiven. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You declare, it's a heart thing. It's a positioning of the heart. You confess with your mouth, you believe in your heart. So, here when Jesus died on the cross, the thief that was beside him, that Jesus said, today you'll be in paradise with me. There's nowhere we read that he confessed every sin he ever did, nor do I believe that he would have had time to. So I think with saying that, and that doctrine that's out there, it's there's a lot of flaws in that, and it's not the confession. We confess our sins to each other for relationship with each other, but it's not a heaven or hell thing. So with that, that's where, with the whole eternal security, I guess you'd call it, or whatever, I remember getting in an argument with somebody as a teenager, as a young believer, about 17 years old, where I did, at that time, I believed every time, if you sinned, if you went out and lied, and then you got hit by a car or whatever, you're going to hell if you didn't repent of that before. And this guy was like, no, there's no way. That's not how it is. And I remember standing there in a parking lot arguing with this guy, to the point where I walked away from that conversation and I was mad. And now I'm like looking at it, it's like, man, I was wrong. And if I knew how to find this guy, I would tell him that I was. So there are times where, hey, I may share something today on this podcast that I look back at 10 years from now and say, oh man, I got that wrong. And I have no problem admitting that. It may not even happen. It may be I share something on this podcast, answer one of these questions, and someone says, no, you're totally wrong. Shows me where I'm wrong, and I'll be like, yeah, you're right, 100%. So, and then we'll address it. We'll address it whenever that happens. So with saying that, I wanted to just kind of throw that disclaimer out there that some of these are how I interpret it, or some of it's my opinions, and we all have different convictions, and I try not to put my convictions onto somebody else, and I think it's very important that we don't do that. So in saying that, let's start answering some questions.
Okay, so we're gonna. Which ones did you want to do, Brandon?
No, you go ahead. Let's do yours, and then because you got a bunch of them written down, so
I don't.
we'll do that.
I
And then
don't
as you
have
look for
them written
another
down.
one,
I
we'll
told you we don't.
switch.
I don't have them written down. I just have like where in my Bible where I like put question marks next to stuff.
Okay. Well, let's ask the first one. The first question mark.
Let me find it. You
You gotta make sure the
I told you-
microphone is up to your mouth.
I told you I'm not
is-
prepared.
This is Joy's first time ever using these
I am.
microphones, and I don't want Brandon to yell at you because he's a yeller, and he yells at me all the time at the end of the podcast, and I'm just like a little beat puppy dog. Yeah. And just want to point out, Brandon is not wearing a trucker hat today.
He's not
so-
wearing any hat. He was wearing a
Yeah.
hat earlier.
He was. Okay. He was wearing a hat earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He took off his trucker hat.
He did.
Yeah, my head is getting a little hot. These headphones on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
take the-
headphones. Yeah, the big headphones, and they can. So, yeah, I can see that. I can see a little head sweat going on over there. So.
Okay, so I found a question mark.
Okay.
And I do want to say also that when I started reading the Bible and I started asking questions, you were kind enough to point out, well, did you read the notes in the bottom before you asked me?
Is that how I sound? Is that my voice? Is that how my voice is, Brandon?
I think it was how it was
I-
at the time.
Yeah.
That's how it sounded.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Dead on.
It kind of
Read the
sounds like
footnotes.
it kind of sounds like Julie's Yoda impression. From earlier, so
Actually, my Yoda impression was like spot on.
that was pretty good.
It was good.
Yeah. People aren't
okay.
going to know what that means.
Well,
you got to come
then
Sunday
you
to
have to
find
come
out what
Sunday
that means.
morning.
Come Sunday morning, yes. Fair one.
Okay, so the first one I did was Matthew, and it was chapter 12, verse 43 through, 45. And it's on demons. When a demon is cast out of a person, it roams around a dry region looking for a place to rest, but never finds it. Then it says, I'll return to the house I moved out of, and so it goes back, only to find that the house is vacant, warm, and ready for it to move back in. So it goes looking for 7 other demons, more evil than itself, and they all enter together to live there, and then the person's condition becomes much worse than it was in the beginning. And this describes what also happens to people of this evil generation. So I think I maybe might have asked you a little bit about that before, like when a demon's cast out, like why it would be able to come back, like even stronger to the same person.
Yeah. Okay. So with this, you have, a demon gets cast out, which why it is too also important. There's a lot that goes into it, and I know there's a lot of people out there, they don't believe in casting out demons, which, by the way, a lot of Jesus' ministry was casting out demons. So and it's something that still happens today. Stuff that I've witnessed it, I've seen it happen. But there's a lot going on. We could actually, I think Pastor Mark and I did a podcast on this not too long ago, and we could do a whole podcast. But happens is when a demon is cast out of someone, they are cast out and they are sent roaming the earth. Now, I remember as a kid, them telling us like there would be a situation where it would seem like somebody had a demonic spirit in them and they were acting crazy or talking different or whatever, and they would tell everybody to pray, and somebody in the church would go around and like start praying over people. And I know I'm not the only person that's ever experienced this. Talking to people that grew up in the church, is they would say, you got to make sure you're pure, make sure you don't have any sin, because if you do, the demon can leave them and then go into you, which is absolutely 100% false. That is not what happens. But as a little kid, it scares the crap out of you. And I remember somebody telling me this. My grandfather, who was a pastor, came, and the first time I ever seen him get upset, and he was so mad, and he told them that it wasn't true, and told them that he better never catch them saying something like that to me again, because it was a situation where they were telling me that. But
Wow.
with it is, so a demonic spirit, because so there has to be just some kind of legal right that demonic spirit has to that person. And with saying demon possessed. Some people say like oppressed, where there's these demonic spirits like kind of hang on to you, or they have a legal right to that area in your life, and which does happen. You can be a Christian and still this demonic spirit has this legal right to this area in your life, and when it's brought up, it comes out. So you got to get rid of the legal right. But when a demon gets cast out, the Bible says clearly here, it roams the earth. It's sent to roam the earth back and forth until it's like, well, I'm going to go back to that person that I was in before, that to his house, which is a body, because it's this demonic spirit. Spirit's not a person. It's I don't believe demons are fallen angels, like some people do believe that, but they are. So it's roaming the earth. They're like, okay, I'm going to go back to that house, back to that person. See, are they still living right? And if they've gone back to whatever it was, I'll give an example. Pornography is one of the ways there's a lot of with pornography that gives a legal right to a demonic spirit. It does, and with that, person goes back, gets delivered from that legal right's taken away, then they go back to that, then that demonic spirit comes back, gets 7 of its friends, and that's why, like, then it's even worse. It's like, you ever see someone, they get delivered from something, whether it's an addiction is one of them too, and they're clean, they're living good, and then all of a sudden you see them again, and now it's like they're worse than ever before, and that's where that happened. That's that's an example of where that happened. Is now it's 7 times worse because it went got demonic. He's got his friends, and now they're occupied together. Now it's not one demonic spirit. It's, you got 7. So that's where that comes in, and that's what that's talking about.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right.
Okay, so then, I'm going to keep going. I have tons of questions. Okay. So then my next question is where it talks about Jesus' true family.
Okay.
It says, while Jesus is still speaking to the crowds, his mother and brothers came and stood outside, asking for him to come and speak to them. Then someone said, look, your mother and brothers are standing outside wanting to have a word with you. But Jesus looked at him and said, let me introduce you to my true mother and brothers. And then he gestured to the disciples gathered around him. He said, look closely, for this is my true family. So I don't understand like why it's almost like he's like denouncing his mother and brothers because he's like, no, they're not my true family. This is my true family. And he just points to his apostles. So like, I wonder, like, what do you think he was like thinking at that time? Like, why would he say that?
So with that, he is talking about his family within the body. The disciples are the ones believing with him. Now, Mary always knew, his mother, that Jesus was the Son of God. She had an angel, Gabriel, told her. But too, with his brothers, they did not. James, who is the book of James in the Bible, and the book of Jude are written by 2 of Jesus' half-brothers. They were sons of Mary and Joseph. Jesus is, God was his father, so Joseph was his stepdad, I guess, or you could say, or whatever, but, Mary is his mother. So they didn't believe until Jesus was resurrected and showed them, and then, it's like, oh, I guess my brother is the Messiah. But with this, what he's talking about is he is sharing, those that are within the same body, the same beliefs, like we are with the church. We're all in the body of Christ. We're family. So what Jesus was, it was given an example of, hey, my real family is these disciples. They're with me through that. And a lot of times, the phrase, is blood's thicker than water, which is talking about, the blood relatives. Yeah. But it's not always the case, and he was just giving that example is, hey, this is my family. These are my brothers and sisters, and in that. And so that's what I believe he was talking about.
Okay.
You got anything else, or you want me to go to Brandon, or
you can go to Brandon.
All
I
right.
have a lot. I mean, don't ask me if I have anything else because I have full of them. I got full of questions. We can go for days.
Questions for days. Yes.
Days.
All right, Brandon, you got a question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with Julia. I think we could probably do this over and over again.
Yes.
So many questions to ask. So what does the Bible have to say about animals, and do animals go to heaven? Do our pets go to heaven?
Okay. So that is a very good question. I will tell you how I grew up believing, first of all, and I was always told by my parents that no, animals do not have a soul and they don't go to heaven, which, I had animals, I had pets, and I was devastated because I was like, my dog, Sammy, it's kind of nice knowing that, hey, I'll see him again in heaven, and then it's told, animals don't have souls, and so with that, I will say, first of all, that the Bible does not say directly on this one way or the other. It does talk about animals in heaven. There's, Jesus riding a white horse. So this talks about an ox. It talks about a lion. It talks about a lamb. It talks about animals in heaven. So with that, obviously there are definitely animals in heaven. So are those animals just always been in heaven, or is it the animals that were here that died and went on? That does not say exactly with that, but it does talk about animals, even in Genesis, having a soul. Every breathing, everything that breathes, having a soul. So God's the one that breathed life into them. He breathed through, gave them life. So with that, I would say yes. How I believe with that now is, I do. I feel like I've read scriptures that kind of point to that way, where yes, there are animals in heaven, there are pets in heaven. With that, I know there is. See if I can find it. That's the bad thing with doing the Q&A, sometimes trying to find stuff right away. But in Ecclesiastes, it does talk about that when died, the spirit of man goes up, and then it says the spirit of an animal goes down into the earth. It does talk about that, but this is, which is, if I'm remembering right, King Solomon, one that said that. So does that mean that the souls don't go to heaven? I wouldn't say that exactly. I think that there's other scriptures where it kind of shows, they are. So I guess my answer to that, in a whole bunch of words, is I don't know, but I feel like yes, there are.
I feel like they would. I
Yeah.
don't feel like God would give us the relationships He does with our pets and our animals, and let us, love them and have them love us unconditionally, and not let us spend eternity with them.
Yes, and true. I do know this in heaven. It's a totally happy place, and we talk about heaven like that's our main destination. It's not. The Bible talks about God creating a new earth. That's how His plan with Eden is, that we have earth, and He would hang out with us here on earth. It's like heaven and earth coming together, which that is the final. That's the final. That's what's going to happen at the end of this, is heaven and earth coming together. So us spending eternity on the new earth, the new heaven, the new Jerusalem, however you want to say it. So I would say, He gave Adam and Eve animals. He gave him actually dominion over the animals. So He gave him pets at the beginning. So there is, and I think anybody that has a pet, knows, there's something about a pet. There is just happiness. They bring happiness. It's proven that those that have pets live longer. They have less depression. They have, so there are, I guess you could say, like, healing factors of having a pet. So obviously God knew how important it was with the animals and all of that. And I'm going to say, I believe that except for snakes, they all go to hell, obviously.
Oh my gosh.
Snakes go to hell. Yeah, and mosquitoes. Snakes and
Yeah,
mosquitoes.
mosquitoes for sure.
Yes,
but
mosquitoes definitely do not go to heaven. Not roaches either, yeah.
no,
So-
there's no roaches in heaven.
All right. You got a next question?
So I do, and I know that this is a question that I have asked in each of the four books that I've read so far. Is I need to understand why out of season Jesus went to a fig tree, got mad at it for it not having fruit, and then made it wither up and die when it was not even fig tree season.
Yeah.
I need to know because it
Why it wouldn't even produce fruit there.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't producing fruit. It was out of season.
So with that, obviously, you know, Jesus is, through this whole thing, as he's going on this journey, he's ministering to people, but he's also teaching his disciples. You know, they're students here. You know, his disciples are going to be the ones that go out, and when he's gone, they're the ones that are going to go out, spread the word, start the church. So it's a learning situation process with them. So with that, he is showing, you know, as example of, you know, Christians that, you know, as believers, we should be producing fruit. We should be in season and out of season. We should be producing good fruit. That's just part of it. You know, we should be an example of Christ. So here's Jesus. Here's a fig tree. Doesn't have any fruit on it. He takes his opportunity to use it as a teaching experience with the disciples. And it didn't have fruit. It wasn't producing fruit. Did it produce fruit in season? I don't know. I know it does talk about, if you research it, it was not. At this time, it was not season for the fig tree to produce fruit. But he used that as an example with that. He curses the fig tree. It dies.
It withers away.
Withers away. The disciples were kind of like, just like, well, what's going on? You know, and a lot of times when Jesus is sharing parables and stuff like that, the disciples were like, we don't understand. So it was him teaching that at this time. Why he had to go to the extreme to pretty much kill the fig tree, that is one of those where I'm not sure, unless he just felt like at that time it was very important for them to see that as, hey, you know, you need to be producing fruit in season and out of season as a Christian. So even when you're in a bad mood, you should still be producing good fruit. And
if you don't, you will wither away and die.
Well, with that and saying that, you're actually withering away and dying, no, but in your Christianity, in your walk, and with that, you are not, you know, you have the opportunity to either give somebody life, like produce good things with somebody, or devastate somebody with your words. And, you know, so in good times, bad times, whatever, you should be ready to produce good fruit. You should be speaking life into people, not speaking death into people. I think we've all been around people at times that speak death. We probably all have spoke death before, not, you know, where we're killing people, but speaking death is just negativity. Negativity is, that's death. That's, you know, yeah, you start speaking negative, that stuff is contagious. It's like cancer, it spreads. So with this, if you aren't producing good fruit, really that negativity comes in and you do start to wither away. You start to, and then you're taking all those people with you. It's not just you. Very rarely is negativity only affecting you. It's affecting those around you.
I understand it when you put it that way.
Okay.
I still don't think that he needed to kill the fig tree to get his point across.
Well, when we get to heaven, you can say, "Hey,
I will. I'll be
don't."
like, you,
yeah,
Jesus.
And then he may be like, "Well, that's what happened," or maybe he would just be like, "Well, you didn't see the point when after I walked away, I came back alive."
Yeah, maybe it did.
Yeah, maybe you didn't see it where the fig tree was in on it. You know, yeah, maybe that part. All right, Mark Peterson sitting over there. You got a question?
I do, actually.
All right, come. Yeah, you can come over and get the microphone from Brandon, and you can ask a question.
One of my favorite scriptures is James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But then it goes on to say, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. Now, I've been dealing with some things for a while now. I'm praying on it and praying on it, and my wife has as well. And, you know, we keep hitting these roadblocks, and I just don't understand, you know, I feel like my faith is strong, you know, and we just keep getting these roadblocks and you know, doors closed in our face.
Right.
But, you know, like I said, my faith is strong. You know, I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in the Holy Trinity. And yet I feel like, you know, there's something missing here, because, you know, I'm praying constantly every day in my
Okay.
faith.
So what's
You
your
know,
question, Mark?
What
What's the question that you're asking with this?
what does I just, you know, don't understand what this is saying, because in one case it's saying, you know, ask and it will be given to you, and then I get hit with all these things and the frustration sets in, and it says such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. I don't understand that. You know, I'm just
Right.
trying to wrap my head around that, because I don't feel as though I'm unstable. I don't feel as though, you know, my faith is stronger than it's ever been, being a part of what's going on here in this church.
Okay, so let me I will give you how with this, because what I'm getting from this is you ask, you know, I have faith, I ask, and then when I ask, I don't see it taking place. I don't see it happening. And with that, I can say even in my own life, I've seen where I've asked for God to do stuff, and then it didn't happen. And I'm like, why, God? Why didn't it happen? I really was believing that this would happen. It didn't happen, but then later down the line, something even better happened. Like something that did. And I can say that happened with here at Farallon, with becoming, when Pastor Mark and I became pastors at Farallon Church, seeing that happen. Definitely not even thought about asking whatsoever, asking asking to become a pastor of Farallon Church, or a church that's been established for 70 years or anything like that. But seeing that happen and come is like, man, that was like bigger than anything I have asked for. And something that when you're talking about that, back in, if you go to Acts chapter 16, Paul, he has a vision from a man in Macedonia where he's ministering to that person. And when he goes and he starts traveling there, and he has his partner Silas, they're with him, and they end up, for spreading the gospel, they're in Philippi, whatever. Where they end up in prison, and they were beaten, they were stripped down naked in front of everybody in the town, you know, and all this, it was really for setting a woman free from this demonic spirit. But they ended up in prison, and I'm sure at that time, Paul was like, man, this does not look like the vision that I had whatsoever. Like, not at all. But with that, God had a plan, because through that, God opened the doors of that jail, of that prison, and they ended up leading the jailer to Christ, and then he took them home to his family. He baptized the jailer and his family. They became believers, and then through that, if you study the church history, that family and that man, the jailer, he was very instrumental in starting the church in Philippi, and with that, Philippi, or however you want to say it. But that's where, like, Paul was like, man, that's not my vision. And was the jailer the man that he saw in his vision? I don't know, but I'm sure at the time, you know, Paul, he probably felt like just saying, man, this is ridiculous. You gave me this vision, God, of this happening. I went on faith and believing that you're going to take care of me. Now I've just been beaten. I've been stripped down. I've been beaten for spreading your word. And I'm in prison here. I'm chained to the walls. His feet were chained. But he didn't. He worshipped anyways. And that was one where it's I'm producing good fruit even in season, out of season. Obviously, I'm sure Paul felt like this was out of season being here. But God had a bigger plan, and through him going to prison there, the jailer got saved. That whole town, there was a church planted there, and it was just bigger and better than what Paul had visioned. So, but I think that happens to us a lot of times. I mean, it would be easy to say, man, I just kind of give up. So with that, with your situation, not sure like exactly what it is. I know we talk, and I may have an idea, but I know this, that whatever you're asking for, God has plans that are going to surpass whatever it was that you had in mind. And I know with talking to you, God's done that many times in your life, and I believe that through this is part of yours and Tina's and little Mark's journey, and you are going to experience something that is even bigger than what you had imagined. Why is it having to happen like this and go through this? I'm not sure why always we go through the things, but I do know that there's strength in that. And I believe through that there is going to be, you guys are going to have strength when your relationship is going to be strengthened with God more and with each other more through this. So I think that's my best way with answering that. So thank you, Mark, for the question. You got another question, baby?
Yeah. I don't think you should say, do I? I think you should say, what is your next question?
What is your next question, baby?
Okay. So, I lost it. I lost that one. I had it. Oh, here it is. So, I'm going to preface this by saying I think that after reading just the little bit that I have, that Jesus was in a hurry to teach as many people as he could in a very short amount of time, just because he always feels like he's just exasperated by trying to prove himself to people. And I can, just reading it, I can kind of get that. And that's kind of how I feel. Like he's just like, why aren't you people listening to me kind of thing. But in this, I feel like he may be, I just want to kind of get your opinion on it. But it's in Luke chapter 9, verse 41 is what I have kind of marked out. Okay. But it's where a man asks Jesus to cast a demon out of a son because the demon leaves the boy in convulsions and he's foaming at the mouth. And he had said the disciples tried to do it, but he couldn't do it. Yes. And so Jesus says, you are an unbelieving people with no faith. You twist your lives with lies that have turned you away from doing the right things. How much longer should I remain here offering you hope? Then he said to the man, bring your son to me. And then the boy approached. The demon slammed him to the ground. The demon slammed the boy to the ground and threw him into violent convulsions. And Jesus sternly commanded to the demon to come out of the boy, and he left immediately. Right. So why is Jesus so exasperated at this point? Because the disciples weren't able to drive the demon out, and then the guy's just like, I just want my son free of this demon. And then I feel like Jesus is yelling at him.
Okay. So with this, too, also the disciples said that they could not grasp the meaning of what he was saying, mm-hmm. And there was mystery around that. There was a lot going on during this time. And you can see even after this, it talks about, so here's this boy just got, he just got delivered of this demonic mm-hmm. spirit, all right? And then in the same chapter, just a few verses down, the disciples are beginning to argue about who's the greatest among them.
Yes.
So obviously here the disciples, they've been traveling with Jesus for a little while now, and they're not quite getting it. They're not quite understanding, because here they are, they're arguing about which mm-hmm. one of them are better. I've done a message on this mm-hmm. With that, and I'm sure Jesus is just like, I mean, come on, they're they're not learning. I mean, are they getting any of this? Are they understanding any of this? You know, it's jealousy with each other. You wouldn't have an argument about that if they weren't jealous of each other and who's better. You know, I'm closer to Jesus, or, you know, I do this for Jesus, and you know, so I'm the greatest. I'm the most important disciple. And we see that happen even within the church. You know, people thinking, well,
Yes.
you know, whether it's, you know, hey, I'm the pastor, or hey, I'm the worship leader, or hey, I'm a greeter, or I'm, you know, what, and just saying, you know, hey, I'm the most important. You know, I've been going to church here for this long, this amount of years, so I'm the most important. And we see that even today. And I think what this has given us, it's given us an example of Jesus' posture during our time of us arguing with each other. And he's just like, man, they do not get it. They still don't understand what this is all about. And it's, so, I mean, I'm thinking with this, here's these disciples are trying to, like, outdo each other with casting this demon out.
Yeah.
And it's just not coming out. And it's come to a root here with this jealousy of, hey, there's jealousy within the 12 disciples. And Jesus knew this. He saw this. So there's frustration with it, because it's just like, man, they are not getting it. And, I think through that, we're kind of seeing the answer of where that frustration may be coming from in just a few verses down of them arguing about this. And Jesus is like, it's not even important. I got to waste my time now dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I shouldn't be. We should be, like, it should be, you know, letting people know about why I'm here. It's about, you know, saving the world, and you're going to argue about who's greater. You're going to, you know, let jealousy be what motivates you, instead of just, you know, just winning the lost.
Yeah.
So I think that we see kind of why there may be some frustration with that there.
Okay.
So.
Do you want Brandon to ask his
Yeah,
other
Brandon, you got
question?
another question?
Yeah, and just going back to earlier with the animals, I'm going to take that as a win for
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah,
I
win
Oh,
for
yeah.
the animals.
I think
yeah.
you pushed it over
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
to the yes side. Yeah, so this is kind of a silly question, but what, if anything, does the Bible have to say about tattoos?
All right. It's a very good question. Actually, it's one that I get asked from time to time, obviously because, well, I have tattoos. And I've had people say, well, you know, they're all your tattoos that you've had, but, you know, before you were, you know, saved. And it's like, well, I've been saved, like, you know, I mean, I don't, depends on what you call saved. I mean, I've gone down to a lot of altar calls, you know, like when I was 5, and then when I was 6, and when I was 7, then when I was 8, and you know, I mean, I'll still, you know, go down, you know, to a, you know, you get a Stephen Furtick altar call, you know, I'm probably going to come down. But with that, no, I've even since getting back in the ministry, yes, I've gotten tattoos. I have
They're
one
sexy.
right here on my arm of 4255, and with that, it's how many days from my mom's last breath to me getting back in ministry, which I've told that story a lot about how my mom, 2 days before she died, she said she's going to be praying until her last breath that I'd get back in ministry. From her last breath till I got back in ministry is 4,255 days. I got it tattooed here because I thought that would be a testimony of how effective a mother's prayers are, and how effective our prayers are, that God would answer her prayers even almost 12 years after her last breath. So with that, I would say this is, if you looked at the law and you looked at the Mosaic law, yet there are scriptures about not marking your body. With that, you got to look at the reference with that, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and people that were in different religions and different, I guess you could say, like different, you know, witchcraft, stuff like that. They would mark their bodies of different things, and it was one teaching that, hey, our body is the temple, which it still is, but it's what's inside the temple, not outside. And I would say it goes with conviction. We all have personal convictions, and I would say it's even the same thing. It could be with cursing. You know, I grew up, you know, where hey, you don't curse. I mean, my mom would slap my face if I said a curse word. I mean, it was not. It's just something that you didn't do. But somebody that grew up in a different household and different words. I mean, even different countries. There's I've been in a congregation before where a pastor or a preacher from a different country came and spoke and said what we would consider curse words were just regular words, and he, while I was preaching, used those words, and everybody gasped, and so I think it goes with personal convictions, and it's one of those things where not pushing your convictions on somebody else. I think with me, any tattoo that I get, there's going to be purpose with it, and I believe that with this one, it glorifies God. It's with purpose. So I think it just depends. It depends on the convictions, and it depends on the reason that you're getting that. So I think with just going into a tattoo parlor and just saying, hey, give me whatever tattoo on the wall, there's some stuff that you need to look at, because there's been people that have put symbols and stuff like that on their body and not even realizing what it meant and what it was for. And I think that goes back to the first question when we started this, is giving legal rights to something that you don't want to give legal rights to. So I think it's important for you to know why you're getting it and what you're getting and stuff like that. But do I feel like it's a sin personally? No, I do not feel like it's a sin to go and get a tattoo. So. All right, we got a little bit of time left. What's your next question, baby?
So this question, it says in Luke 22, verse. Well, I'll start with verse 28. It says, "Because you have stood with me through all the trials and ordeals, I am promising you the kingdom that the Father has promised me. We will celebrate in this kingdom, and you will feast with me at my table. And each of you will be given a throne, 12 thrones in all, and you will be made rulers on thrones to judge the tribes of Israel." So my question is, Judas, is he part of that 12, even though that he betrayed Jesus?
So with that, this is one of those where my line of thinking has changed with how I used to think. And so obviously when Jesus shared this, Jesus knew Judas was going to betray him. I mean, he knew what was going to happen. So it wasn't like he was just, if it wasn't supposed to be meant for Judas, why did he say it with Judas there? So, yeah, he talked about the 12 thrones. Is Judas a part of that? Now, I thought, well, yeah, he'd have to be. And that goes back to Pastor Mark and I, we talked about this on one of the podcasts. Is Judas in heaven or is he in hell? And it's like, well, it depends. Did he die before Christ died, or did he die after? Was he covered under that? I mean, obviously, Judas, there was conviction there because he went and gave back the money, but then he went out and he hung himself, he killed himself. But in Acts chapter 1, with this, it talks about the disciples coming together and them, the believers all coming together, and there's 120 believers, and they had to decide who was going to fill that 12th spot. Now, with me, it's like, well, why not just leave it open? Couldn't there just be 11? Do you need somebody to fill Judas' spot, really? I mean, John even talks about it as that Judas, even before this happened, Judas, he didn't care about the poor. He was constantly taking money out of the pot or out of their treasure or whatever. He was taking money out of there. He was stealing from Jesus and from his ministry. It's like, do we really need a replacement for Judas? But they felt like they did, and there was these two guys. It was a guy named Joseph and a guy named Matthias, and they had to decide which one of them are going to be the 12. And they decided that it was going to be Matthias, however you want to say it, and he was the 12th. And it even goes and talks about in Acts chapter 1, and it's in verse 20, it says, "Let another take his ministry," talking about taking Judas's ministry. So Judas still had a ministry. There was still, if he wouldn't have betrayed Jesus, there was still a ministry for him to have. So they needed somebody else to come and take that ministry, and it was Matthias. And So I believe, personally, I used to think, yeah, Judas, that throne's for Judas still. But now, well, Matthias took that ministry, so that 12th throne is Matthias's, and that's kind of where there's how I believe with that, and somebody else may look at that, say something different, but I would love to hear from you guys of how you feel about that. So what do you think? Is that 12th throne Judas's? Is it Matthias? Is it somebody else's? Is it vacant? What goes on with that? So, yeah. I think we got time for one more question. So you got one more? Or what's your next question, baby?
Okay, so this one is fairly new. It's from Acts. Oh, where did I read it? And this is just not my last question, but I mean it's like the last one for this podcast.
Yeah, I think it would be good to do. Well, it would be cool to do another Q&A.
Yeah. Because I'm
A
going to have
little
a lot
later
of questions
too, and maybe we can add some questions from those that are watching on the live stream right now, and we can get a whole bunch of questions together. And I think this is one of those things where we could probably have podcast after podcast after podcast of
I overthink
Q&A or
everything too.
Q&R.
So I'm only 4.5 books into the Bible, and I have a lot of questions because I obviously overthink everything, and I need to understand it because, I'm just like one of those. I don't know. I'm gonna need a little proof. So my next question is I need to understand.
Okay.
In Acts 15. Verse 19. So in my judgment, we should, and do we need to explain that at all? Or maybe I'll just read it and then you can explain it.
Okay.
Like where it's coming from and who's saying it. So in my judgment, we should not add any unnecessary burden upon the non-Jewish converts who are turning to God. We will go to them as apostles and teach them to be set free from offering sacrifices to idols, sexual immorality, and eating anything strangled or with any blood. So because before, they were eating lamb and having a big feast and stuff, and lambs have blood. So it's saying here that they cannot eat anything strangled or with any blood. So fish only, or
So here it is. It's and I think there's different lines of thinking with this, and you could probably ask this question to a lot of different pastors, and you'd probably get different answers. So with this, and this is James, this is the half-brother of Jesus that is sharing this here in Acts chapter 15. And he's putting it together with, one, he's going out and speaking to the non-Jews and not putting extra stuff on them that we don't need to. And, Paul talks about, throughout the New Testament, about the freedom to eat whatever, but he also talks about not offending somebody with what you eat. Now, it's not that big of a deal now as it would have been back then, because the law states the Mosaic law states that you could only eat certain things, and the Jewish religion, that they were very strict on that, of what they could eat. And even Peter was strict on it, and when God gave him a vision of all these different animals that were considered unclean, he told him to eat of them, and he's like, no, I'd never have done that. And then he said, no, it's all of it is clean. I declare it all clean. And he's talking about he's giving an example of different, not just Jewish people, but different ethnical backgrounds and all of that. But you see then, I think it's in maybe Galatians, where Peter still struggled with this, because Paul talks about he's talking to people and talking about how he rebuked Peter because there was a situation where Peter came in and would only eat with his fellow Jews and wouldn't eat with the non-Jews, and Paul rebuked him for this. So Peter struggled with this. So when it talks about not eating with anything strangled or with any blood, I believe it's talking about things that the blood is still there, is present, the blood hasn't been drained out, and also what something that we don't really experience in our culture, but was big back then, is offering sacrifices to idols, and they would offer animals sacrifices. And Paul did talk about if you knew an animal was used for sacrifice to an idol, not to eat it because of what it represented. So here, I'm thinking that there must be some kind of connection with offering sacrifices to idols, sexual immorality, and then eating anything strangled or with any blood. So maybe there was something. Maybe there was even sexual rituals that had to do with this. But then if you ask other people, they may say, well, there was a health reason, like knowing what is
Good for your body.
good for your body and not good, with that. And with that, I would say, well, then why did Paul say later on that, you're free to eat whatever because it's all considered clean, So I think there's probably more to this and reason why James is saying this at this time. I think that there may be with it some offense that would be brought up is, you're mixing cultures, Jews and non-Jews, Jews and Gentiles. So with that, putting the apostles, they were putting churches together where it was mixed. It was Jews and non-Jews and that. So maybe there was not causing offense with this. I could see that being the case. So I think with this, there's more probably that of a reason why James is stating this than we are actually just seeing right here. But I think it is a very good question, is why is that, and then why later did Paul say, well, you're free to eat whatever. So I think maybe with that, with the strangulation of any blood, maybe used for idol worship or maybe some kind of sexual rituals and stuff like that. So,
Well, it's interesting, though, because you say that Peter struggled with it.
yes.
But Peter's the one that actually had the vision.
Yes.
And he's the one that was, when he was in the trance and he said that he saw the image of the tablecloth being pulled down in the four corners with the four-legged animals and like all the different like birds and whatever.
Yeah.
And Jesus said to eat from it freely.
Right.
So it's interesting that you say that he struggled with it because he's the one that sat there in the vision and had Jesus speak to him
saw
and
it.
tell him.
So yeah, and he struggled with it himself. Now he's been taught this his entire life. I mean, Jewish culture. And Peter even said when in the vision when God told him to eat of it, he said, "No, I've never ate anything unclean." So that's a personal conviction there with that, and I'm assuming that even Peter, after having this vision, still didn't eat of what was considered unclean. And I mean, he did go into non-Jewish territories and preach the gospel and minister to people, and it kind of opened Peter's eyes. That hey, this salvation is for everybody, not just for the Jews. But still, it was like a personal conviction to where when he got together with Jews and non-Jews, it was a situation where he was only eating with people who were Jewish, and Paul was like, "Dude, what are you doing? You're causing division here. This is happening." And Paul had to rebuke him. I think that's really the only time we see where Peter and Paul communicated. There was a time where Paul said that he did stay with Peter for a couple of weeks. That's in here as well. But I found it interesting in that scripture, and I don't know where it is right off the top of my head. I think it's either in 1 Corinthians or in Galatians, but where he talks about this. But he just puts it out there right there. Hey, I had to rebuke Peter. Now Peter's the one that started the church. Jesus said, "I'm going to build my church upon you." They called Peter the Rock, But Paul felt like at that time he needed to approach him and say, "Hey, man, what you're doing is wrong. It's causing division," and throw that. So I think and it shows why that's important even today, that we never, the leaders and pastors and stuff never get to the point where we feel like, where we can't be corrected.
Right.
And I thought it was also interesting, I would like to know what Peter's reaction to that was, but we don't see where Paul said, "Yeah, Peter punched me, punched me right in the face." We don't see that. So I'm thinking that it was a wake-up call to Peter with this. of saying, oh yeah, I'm still doing this. Even after you had the vision. So it is interesting.
It is.
With that, and I think it shows where, hey, it don't matter who you are or where you are in this walk. There are still some things that you struggle with, that we're going to struggle with. That it's and it's a continual journey. It's a continual walk with God, and where we continually strengthen.
Always learning.
Yes. So.
And growing.
So that is it. I know that you have a lot of other questions, and I'm sure that we can, and we'll do another Q&A. I'd love to. I don't know what to call it, Q&A, question and answer, or Q&R, kind of like that, because different questions and responses, because not necessarily answers.
No.
There might just be
Opinions.
responses. So it's not, like I said.
I don't know. Maybe we can do like an all talk in the lobby. You want to start all talk because I want to have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
So. Guys, if you have questions, you can put it in the comment section, or you can email us. My email is jimmy.farallonchurch@gmail.com. Julie's, her email is Julie, I'm going to see if I get this right, julie.helpinghandsanimalz.
Helping hand animals.
helpinghandanimals@gmail.com.
Yes.
That's our email. You're going to put it in the comments. We'll read the comments personally as well and try to get back to you through the comments. If not, maybe even address that at the next podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear ideas that you'd like for us to talk about, whether it's Julie and me or Pastor Mark and myself, either one. Also want to invite you guys to service this Sunday at Farallon Church. We have 2 services, 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. We have Sunday school sandwiched in between there at 10:20. We'd love to see you this Sunday. I'm going to be speaking.
I thought you said some really funny hot guy was speaking.
Yeah, I did. That's what I told her, before. I was like, hey, come. This guy's going to be really hot and really funny and good looking.
I said, no, Mark spoke last week.
Yes. But, yeah, I'm going to be speaking. And, of course, we're going to have Farrell on Fire, our worship team, Pastor Chantel, and they're going to be leading us in worship. They've been doing fantastic job anyways, but the last 2 weeks I think have been even, just kind of gone up the next level. Mm-hmm. It's awesome just to and just
we have
to get
more
together.
Singers coming, with Diane and Denise. I mean, they've been doing great.
And Miss Linda, she's been sick, but maybe she'll be back.
Yep,
yeah,
she's been sick the past couple weeks.
Yeah,
and Raul on the guitar and Jackie on the keyboard.
Yep. So
They're
awesome.
doing amazing.
L Dog at times on the drums or the
Yeah.
cajon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're
got
blessed.
An awesome team here together.
We do.
And we could go through and just talk about our whole entire team. I think that would be a cool podcast sometimes where we just introduce different people from our team.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, because there's a lot that people may not know about, like our guys in the sound booth, with
like Brandon. Well, if we
Brand-
can't interview Brandon, because then who's going to run the sound?
Yeah,
I
we'll have
mean,
to
come
figure
on.
that out. But, yeah, we got Brandon. We got Mark Peterson back there, John and Elliot, Star. We got a whole team together, some good people. Chelsea, we got, that are part of the media and production team. So, got a lot of good people here. Guys just he knows what he's doing.
So
Definitely
amazing.
putting an amazing team together.
It's been quite the year.
So, all right, guys, I think that is it. You got anything else you want to say?
I got lots of questions. No, I'm good for now.
Okay. All right. So, guys, thank you for watching In the Lobby, and we love you guys.